And with a deep in-breath. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Well, I have an interesting session planned for us today. I'm going to flip over now and share the screen. Second tier circle. May 3rd into 1050. We're studying the book and getting the religious teaching from the book No Religion by the monk Buddhadasa Bikkhu, who died in 1993. We've come quite a ways through this book, so we'll repeat a little bit from what we did last week, and then start again with something a little new, which is going to be the void mind. The void mind. Has anyone amongst us experienced a void mind?
Only if somebody asks the question.
Maybe we have, but didn't call it that. In this book, Buddhadasa, he digs into the heart of selfishness and selfish desire, and particularly attachment to I and mind, and points to the unselfish remedy. So how to free ourselves from the illusion of I and mine, and to live a life more free of selfish desire. Selfish desire. We're going to look at that today from the perspective of working with a void mind. Working with a void mind. I have a little exercise, which we'll do in a while, but first I thought we ought to look a little bit into a void mind and what that means, then do the exercise, and then take a new look at some of his teachings, drawing from the experience of our exercise. The objective of Buddhism is the same as of Christianity. Don't let dualistic attachments or thoughts dominate your heart or your mind. So how the dickens do we do that? Don't let dualistic attachments, black and white, good and bad, yours, mine, dominate your heart or your mind. Don't let original sin overpower you. And his conception, which is not like the Catholic conception of original sin is when we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and dualistic thought crept into our mind. For me, this is also coincident with language itself, because most things about language are distinguishing between this and that, this and that. It's just some of the distinguishing that we do is what you might call a factual, where we distinguish something in one hand versus something in the other hand, distinguish something we see here from something we see there. And then there's the distinctions we make, which are moral. And those constitute the original sin, when we ate from the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't let that original sin overpower you. We may still have it, but don't let it overpower us. Okay, how to do that? Refuse to let original sin dominate the mind ever again. Well, okay, we need to know how to do that. We must always be aware of the true nature of reality, or Dhamma, true reality, that in reality there is no duality of any sort, particularly these moral dualities. So he's going to list some, and let's see which ones feel real to us and which ones don't, keeping in mind that he asserts none of these are really real. No gain, no loss. No gain, no loss. Those are all mental relative constructs, even though they may be associated with emotions. Loss may be associated with grief. Gain may be associated with pleasure. And then those emotions live in our bodies. So gain and loss, they seem real, not real. No happiness, no suffering. Can't have one without the other. Well, my goodness, we may recall a time when we suffered. He is saying, in a sense, in a deep sense, it wasn't real. It was rather how we held it in our minds. Sometimes we felt happy. We remember a happy time. Again, he has said, well, that's how we held it in our minds. But in the deepest sense, not real. No good, no evil. Of course, this goes against some of the things we learned at a very young age. How to be a good kid, who the bad kids were. Some things were evil. So they became a reality for us. But in the relative sense, the deepest reality, no good, no evil, no merit, no sin. Sam, what's the definition of sin?
Quoting Reverend Ross, self-induced nonsense.
Self-induced nonsense, right. Thank you. So no merit, no sin. No male, no female. I'm guessing there's some arguments there because the females amongst us would say, wait a minute, I'm not a male like Sam or Della or Steve or Richard. And we males might say, well, wait a minute, we're not like Susan or Jan. But in a deeper sense, these are dualities. And finally, no I, no mine. No I, no mine. If that feels difficult to internalize, a step to do that is to hold the thought, well, this isn't mine, it's God's. God owns it. I'm a custodian. It's not I who do the doing or the thinking or the having. Rather, it's the Christ consciousness in me doing, having, thinking what is mine to do, think, or have. So there are ways of holding this. These are not real. There is absolutely nothing at all that can be separated and polarized into opposites. Rather than buy into them, we ought to transcend them. So he's not saying we can get rid of these dualities. They've been with us since we've been little kids. They're embedded in our consciousness. But rather than buy into them, can we, and we ought to transcend them. How to do that. So we're going to look at some how-tos pretty soon. This is a bit of a summary of how we ended last week. Let's go on. Any questions? The dualistic pairs are the basis of all attachments. So don't fall for their tricks. Don't attach to any of them. Now, in the Buddhist teachings, there's a great emphasis on our consciousness of being attached and grasping to things. In the Hindu tradition, which we've studied, the Bhagavad Gita, the emphasis is more on selfish desires. Selfish desires. Attachments and selfish desires are two windows on the same experience. Don't attach to any of the dualities or to our selfish desires. Okay? So it's good to see that there are some things that transcend words, but we have to use words to talk about them. So the Buddhists talk about attachments, grasping. In the Hindu tradition, the talk is of selfish desires and transcending our selfish desires. Try to understand that these things can never be seized and held on to because they are impermanent and lack any real substance. All these dualities, gain, loss, can't seize and hold on to them because they're impermanent. Good, evil, impermanent, lack any real substance. So reality is some other place, deeper than our dualities. Try to go about your business with a mind that is unattached. I'm always suspicious about the word try. I never like to try things myself. I either like to do them or not do them. Trying, to me, seems sort of like an excuse. Well, I tried to, but, you know me, didn't work out. I tried to go about my business with a mind that's unattached, but I couldn't do it, so I gave it up. So here we go. His advice is try to go about your business with a mind that is unattached and free from selfish desire. We need some help with this. Work with a mind that clings to nothing. So that's our goal, clinging to nothing, and is free from all forms of attachment or selfish desire. This is called working with a void mind. So that's the subject of our talk today, working with a void mind. Work with a mind that clings to nothing and is free from all forms of attachment. So we have the dualities, we have the selfish desires, but can we step back from them and not cling to them and not let them run us? He calls this working with a void mind. Okay, let's get into void mind and see how to do that. How to experience a void mind. How to experience a void mind, a mind that is not ruminating. I don't know about yours, my mind loves to ruminate. When I go on my walks in the morning, if I'm not careful, my mind just ruminates and ruminates and ruminates. Actually, I have a schedule on my morning walk. I give my mind I go for 3 miles. I give my mind about a mile's worth of ruminating. And I just let it ruminate on whatever it wants to. Usually I decide what I'm going to have for breakfast. My mind loves to ruminate on that. And I'll ruminate on whatever's coming up for the day. Like today, my mind ruminated on second tier circle. And then it ruminated on a TV show that I saw a couple nights ago, and so on. So our minds like to ruminate. How to experience a void mind, a mind that is not ruminating and attached to one of the legs of a duality. I notice in my ruminating, I often get attached to one of the legs of duality. Well, this is good. I'm going to do that. And well, that's not so good. I need to avoid that. And gee, I remember what I did and what I saw, and I didn't like it, or I did like it. A mind that is not ruminating and attached to one of the legs of duality or yet another leg. Because as our minds ruminate, they go from one duality to another. It's sort of the nature of the mind as we experience it as human beings. Like a car's motor, sometimes the mind is in forward gear, anticipating outcomes. Wonder how that's going to work out. I'm fearful of this. What if I get the coronavirus? I need to be mindful of that. Well, in my outcome, I'm not convinced that this is something out of the ordinary, so I'm participating in an outcome that's just going to stay the same. So in forward gear, we anticipate outcomes, sometimes in reverse, rehashing events, slipping the past. So we can think of a car's motor as an analog for some of the things that a mind does. Rare are the moments when the mind is idling in neutral. Rare is the moments when the mind is idling in neutral, fully present in the moment. Now, if you're able to step back from your own mind right now, you might notice that maybe your mind is idling in neutral, and you're fully present in the second tier circle. Or you may notice that some of the things that have been said or brought up activated your mind, and you're in a state of evaluation or a judgment of things, and recalling some past judgments of things or how you hold yourself to be. Rare are the moments when the mind is idling in neutral, fully present in the moment. We put our cars in a neutral or park, let them idle, and then we turn off the key. You don't have to do that. Sometimes I forget to turn the key when the car is in drive, but it's a good idea to put it in neutral or park before you turn off the key. I imagine if you're moving down the street, turning off the key would be a really bad thing to do. So we put our cars in the neutral or park, then we turn off the key. If we can put the mind in the neutral, then turning it off may come more naturally. So if we can put our mind in the neutral, then turning it off and experiencing a void mind may come more naturally. So that's where we're headed. Think of the mind in neutral as a bridge between our normal monkey minds, ruminating here and there, and a void mind, a mind which is silent and quiet. So how can we get the mind in neutral to prepare the mind to go from monkey mind to a void mind? We can use, for this bridge, a well-chosen visualization or a repetitive thought, a mantra. And there are other things you can use, like breathing practices, pranayama. as a bridge between the mind's tendency to run about wherever it wants and the state called a void mind. So we can use these techniques of visualization, repetitive thought, yoga practice, pranayama, as a bridge between the mind's tendency to run about wherever it wants and the state called a void mind. These can talk about some of the wonderful benefits of a void mind, but first I'd like to do a little exercise to put our minds into neutral, and I'm going to choose a visualization to do this. So is everybody ready to do a little exercise and see if we can internalize some of these things I've talked about?
Yes.
Yes.
We're all ready. Silence is affirmation in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So for this exercise, I'm going to suggest we get our body ready so that it doesn't distract us, or rather distract us from the exercise. So again, we want to get our butts firmly in touch with our chairs. It's good if your feet can be firmly attached to the ground. And we want our back straightened. If you want to go an extra step further, this is optional. You can put your hands either on your lap or your table with palms facing upward. This helps us to go into the consciousness of the exercise. It's optional. Here we go. Imagine a channel running up and down your spine. Imagine an open channel running up and down your spine. There's two parts to the exercise. Here's the first part. On an in-breath, imagine the energy from Mother Earth ascending up the spine in that channel and bursting forth from the top of the head, filling the universe with light. Oh. Again, on the in-breath, imagine the energy from Mother Earth ascending up the spine, bursting forth from the top of the head, filling the universe with light. Now, two more times silently on your own. Now, being very talented persons, we're going to add a second part to this visualization. On an out-breath, imagine the light of the universe entering down the top of the head, descending down the spine, flowing into and filling up Mother Earth. Deep breath. On an out-breath, imagine the light of the universe entering the top of the head, descending down the spine, flowing into and filling up Mother Earth. Now let's do both parts of this exercise on our own. With the in-breath, we draw from Mother Earth, fill the universe with light. And on the out-breath, we draw the light down the spine, flowing into and filling up Mother Earth. And experience that flow through your spine both ways. Begin. That's the end of the exercise. Before we press on and discuss the exercise, anyone have any comments or questions they'd like to share with the group?
Steve, I will. The visual aid of that exercise is really experiential way to allow me to feel the body sensations. And I think that visualization of the body's energy from Mother Earth rising up and down the spine is just it's a great way to really be in touch with the here and now. So we're away from the monkey mind and trying to get away from our thoughts. So I just want to share how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Would anyone else have something they'd like to share or questions before we take a look at our exercise?
Me too. I really enjoy that. It's a way to give your mind something to do, so that it just rests, and it brings in a feeling of giving and taking, which is a duality, but that's where we live, and you end up in this moving stream that feels really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else have anything they wish to share or questions before we move on?
One other thing I also appreciate the analogy that you use of putting the transmission from drive to neutral. That really helps me to, especially being a car guy. I appreciate that analogy. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a car guy too, so it comes naturally to me. You can tell, perhaps when I was a kid, cars had gears and clutches, and I was used to that. Okay, so the exercise we just did is what I would call a bridge or idling exercise, where the mind wasn't void. We consciously filled the mind with an image. That image of the energy moving up our spine, filling the universe, the image of the light coming back down through our spine into Mother Earth. These kinds of visualizations, I feel, are very useful to prepare ourselves to experience a void mind. A mantra has a similar purpose. Yoga, breathing practices, pranayama can do the same thing. So through that practice, we're heading towards the experience of a void mind. We're not attached to our selfish desires and dualistic ways of thinking. So as Buddhadasa continues to talk about a void mind, let's relate our experience to what he's got to say. We should perform every kind of task with a void mind. So we can take this a different step and say we should perform every kind of task, noticing if our mind isn't void, and if it's getting us into trouble, thinking thoughts that are not useful, we can use this particular visualization for any task to calm the mind down and prepare it to enter the void state. He says we should perform every task with a void mind, no matter whether it's at the office or at home. So at the office, when you're working, if your mind is somehow full of distracting and full of consternation or fears or anger or worry, you can choose to use that particular visualization just for a couple of breaths to bring your mind back to its neutral or idle position. And there's so many benefits, which he'll talk about. And of course, at home, in our family or friend situations, if we get reactivated with family, friends, or things that go on in the home, things we see on the television or social media that take us into a state of distraction, anticipation, rumination, we can always remember the breath. Okay, breathing in. I clean my spine out, just like a washing machine. Up into the light, and then have that light come back down and re-cleanse my spine and all the chakras as that energy go back to Mother Earth. Even rest and recreation should be done with a void mind. A lot of us look forward to rest and recreation, don't we? It's a break from some of the stresses of work or maybe the stresses of being with others. And he is saying that these things we do, rest and recreation, are also a perfect time to practice this visualization on the path to a void mind. I can tell you that I got the idea for this visualization from my morning walk, because on one section of the walk, I use this visualization while I'm recreationing myself, exercising myself. And just let the mind stay in that place where it's not void, but it's on the path. Even rest and recreation, a mind that always remains unattached and free because it's above all dualities. So you see, even when we're exercising or resting, our minds are going to tend to wander into dualities. You know, our monkey minds, they just seem to have a mind of their own, don't they? So we can always use this visualization or a similar one to keep the mind unattached to those dualities it loves to dwell upon, with a great feeling of freedom. I don't know about you, but when I do that visualization, it's not that I feel free while I'm doing it, but afterwards I notice how free that experience was, above having transcended dualities. If we work with a busy mind, now he's going to talk about what we may do most of the time. If we work with a busy mind, a mind that is restless and always grasping and clinging to one idea, one thing after another, one selfish desire or one selfish aversion, one idea, one thing after another. A mind that is overburdened with attachments and those selfish desires. Then there is suffering, he says. Now, we may associate suffering with something really severe, like we were just in a really bad shape. Something terrible happened. Our mental state was so off kilter, we feel like we're really suffering. There are all degrees of suffering. And in this interpretation, whenever we're out of touch with the present moment, when we're off dwelling on our dualities, in a way it's suffering because we're not present, we're not fully present. We may be partially present, but we're not fully present. And when we can't be fully, totally, wonderfully present, hearing the birds sing and just experiencing the energy of life and of others, in a way that's a suffering. A mind that's overburdened. Then there's suffering. This is the most serious problem facing humanity. And in many ways it is. It's the root of many of the misfortunes of our humankind, the most serious problem. It is the most original sin. Having dualities, good and evil, becomes so real for us, original sin. And in Dhamma language, it's called death. Being attached to these dualities is death. Therefore, we should live, work, and play without attachments. Therefore, we should live, work, and play without attachments and without selfish desires. That was the end of the main body of remarks that I had prepared for today. I'm going to introduce you to another concept, which we'll get into more next week. And here he says there's a short verse of mine which I'd like to discuss. Do work of all kinds with a mind that is void, and to the voidness surrender all of the fruits. Eat the food of voidness as the holy ones do. You'll have died to yourself from the very start. And to the voidness surrender all of the fruits. This may harken back to our study of the Bhagavad Gita. Mm-hmm. You have a right to your actions, but never to your actions' fruits.
I was thinking about that too. Tell me one more time how he defined death. I lost that in your discussion. A couple slides back, you were talking about this, you die, or this is death, but I forgot what the death was.
Let's see if I can find it.
Okay, there. You'll have died to yourself. That you had it there.
Here?
Oh, death in Dharma language. No, one more. You just had it.
Right.
So original sin is death in Dharma language?
Yes. Yes. He has this idea that there are two kinds of language. There are people language and Dhamma, or Dharma language. And people language is how we normally talk. So in people language, when we die, the body rots away and goes in the coffin. But in Dhamma language, we die when we buy into dualistic thinking. And that's why there's a suffering associated with it. So we, since we have bought into dualities, according to Buddhadasa, have many little deaths throughout the day. As we say, well, that's good, he's bad.
So death is like cutting yourself off from from reality.
Remember, Dhamma language is what lives in the heart. That's our heart experience of life, rather than our mental, intellectual experience of life. So in our heart, when we allow dualities, good and evil, well, that's the good guy, that's the bad guy, to dominate our consciousness, then in our heart, in our Christ consciousness, we've killed ourselves off a little bit. It's a little bit of a death. It's in that moment that we have that consciousness, we experience a little death.
Okay, thank you.
So how to resurrect ourselves in the Christian tradition when we experience a little death through this dualistic thinking, what a rotten SOB that person is. Mm-hmm. Or even, my goodness, what a holy, special, wonderful person that is. You know what the definition of a holy person is? It's someone who has seen something and experienced something I haven't seen. Someone who is having a consciousness that I don't have. You see, that's why we say sometimes in unity, well, everything is holy now. To take away that duality, that some things are holy and some things aren't. It's a little trick. If you find yourself stuck in a duality, like, well, gee, this person is just a rotten SOB, and, you know, you're never going to convince me that that person is anything else. And then I think, well, the other person, I know a person who's a really good person. If you want to work with your mind a little bit in this duality, you can just try on for size, taking that rotten person and from the depth of your heart, shine light on that person. Raise your hands up like we do when we behold the Christ consciousness in others, and visualize that rotten, no good person, and soften that image by sending that individual light. And feel the light come from your heart, emanate through your hands, and across the eternity and infinity of a so-called distance, let that person receive the light. And in that light, be neither good nor bad, but just be. So there are techniques for lightening up our dualistic consciousness, which is our original sin. Does that help?
I had that conversation this morning, Steve, and talking about being angry with somebody or defining somebody in a negative state. And the hit I got was the appropriate thing to do is to be grateful for that person being an experience in my life, a learning experience in my life, and thank you for that. And then taking my power back from that experience. That seemed to work for me.
Perfect. Perfect. So we need these little techniques, which I call putting the mind in neutral, to get us off this dualistic bandwagon, heading towards a void mind. And this technique you pointed out, being grateful to that person with whom we've had some negative thinking, or sending them light, or many techniques. Yes, being grateful would be a technique that Rev Russ, I think, would recommend as well. Any of these bridge techniques that soften our dualistic thinking, takes us out of that state of original sin, and in a sense is a resurrection in the moment that we do it. think we need to close now because it's about 10:02. Any final comments or questions before we close?
Appreciating just reflection of what Susan shared, which is when somebody triggers us or there's a stimulus outside of us and we get upset or angry, there are teachers. That's who's giving us an opportunity for us to learn and grow, and to look at it from a attitude of gratitude is just wonderful to be able to get to that state quickly. I appreciate that. It's life's work.
It is.
And ongoing. Anyway,
Right.
Thank you.
Attitude of gratitude takes us out of forward or reverse, puts us into neutral. And then we're prepared for the void mind. Shall we do our closing exercise now?
Yes.
Let's each of us be sure our feet are on the floor, our butts centered on the chair, spine straight, and let's take 3 conscious breaths. And with a deep in breath. Shanti. Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, one and all. Peace be with you, and enjoy the service today.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Love you. Bye.